a lifestyle app, whatever, build the next Tinder or something like that. Almost anything is easier than treating waste and wastewater. But let's get started with Thierry. Tell us something about your background. What brought you to Bali?
I was invited to Indonesia, first of all, not Bali, by one of Indonesia's, I think most successful entrepreneurs, Putra Sampurna. He asked me to set up a peer-to-peer lending company here in Indonesia, which I did. Makar is the name of the company. And after, let's say, in the last half year, I quit doing that. And then I got a call from one of my best friends, Pedro Mora Costa, who was one of the pioneers in the carbon markets. So he actually created the whole mechanism for the carbon trading. And he called me and he said, Thierry, could you help me set up a fund for something which is going to be very new, which is a currency for plastic and currency for waste. So that currency is called circular credits. Mm-hmm. So I'm now part of something called the Circular Action Hub, which is a marketplace for projects like the ones we'll be talking with tonight. And secondly, we're setting up a fund to finance those projects, which will generate something called circular credits. And what we are trying to arrange now is that the fast-moving consumer goods companies like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Unilever will actually pay for those credits at a premium, and that money will then be used to finance some of the projects that we're going to be meeting with tonight.
I have to say it's really one of the most exciting projects I have heard in this industry in a long time, because it solves some of the major issues of how to really have a stable cash flow projection from your project over a longer period of time. Mm-hmm. How long do those credits go on? If I do a deal with you right now and we have some kind of financing agreement, how long can I count on this extra revenue for my project?
Well, a circular credit represents 1 ton of solid waste. Mm-hmm. So not organic waste, not any other type of waste. So generally, people will be thinking of plastic, but it can also be metals, it can be aluminium, can be carton, could be beverage cartons. So once a project has delivered a ton of that waste, they will then be certified for 1 credit. Mm-hmm. And that credit will probably generate for them somewhere in the range of, let's say, 70 to maybe $100 US. And so that money is delivered. What our fund will do is we will pay up front for them to generate that volume. And then let's say within a year, once they've generated 10,000 or 50,000 tons of waste and credits, then we will get those credits and we'll sell it to the fast-moving consumer goods companies for a markup. That's where our business model is.
Excellent. I mean, I really, really like the idea. I don't want to make Olivier wait too long. We have some time at the end of the program to discuss what you're doing. And also, I want to ask you some questions at the end about the startup scene in Bali, which obviously has been hit by the COVID and everything else. I want to see your perspective on this. But we're here to hear some pitches and some cool companies. So, Olivier, why don't you tell us what you're doing?
Well, I wanted to give first a little background on the waste problem here. I think my pitch is going to come a little later. Something that you were asking Thierry why he came here. I was invited to come here to work for one of the first local environmental organizations that was dealing with the waste problem back in the mid-90s. And over the time since then, seen the transformation of the waste problem here to the point now you have this ocean plastic problem. And people don't realize that the ocean plastic problem is an indicator of a bigger problem of just waste management in general. And Indonesia is in a bad way. Yeah, the number 1 country for ocean plastic source is China, but number 2 is Indonesia, and it's only a 1/5 the size of China.
It's impressive. I mean, the amount of plastic that ends up on the ocean here on the beachfront is impressive. Where does it come from?
Well, it comes from everything. I mean, most people in Canggu assume that all their garbage is taken to the right place. It's not. Most places in Indonesia, you have a population that's 270 million. Majority is in urban centers that are along the coastline, largest archipelago in the world. Half the country has no waste management service. And that's an estimate from the World Bank, and that's a high estimate. So imagine if half the U.S., 40% of the U.S. had no waste management, how dirty it would be. So it's no surprise you have a mess here, and traditionally to deal with it, you have the rainy season, the dry season. I call it the throw your garbage in the river season and the burning season. Yeah. So if you're going to throw it in the river or in a canal, you're on the coast. It doesn't need to go very far to end up in the ocean.
Yeah. And it's almost, since there are no waste treatment systems on the island, if I'm correct, at least not on a larger scale right now, sooner or later, we have very heavy rains here. A lot of it, even if it ends up on the landfill or something like this, will end up in the ocean sooner or later, right?
Yeah, the problem is they're trying to build sufficient capacity for the landfills, but to get it there. Yeah. So if you've traveled around in developing countries, you go in Denpasar, there's not like there was a master plan to get access. You cannot have these large trash trucks come in. It's essentially the industry or the sector is really dominated by an informal sector. 80% of it is basically ad hoc collectors.
And it's a great business model. Generally, you just pick up the trash and dump it in the mangroves. It's a very, very simple model. Has worked for a long time in many countries all over the world. And a lot of these infrastructures are still out there. But, there is need to do something. I think also, the governor's office, everybody else is aware that something needs to happen.
Well, yeah,
but actually,
in the last few years, there's been actually a lot of change. For a long time I was here, to even talk about the problem was risky.
Okay.
And really, when President Jokowi came in, it was really the first time we're talking about waste was okay. He basically came from a city. He was a mayor of the city Solo, and then he was the governor of Jakarta. So he understood how important this was, and he understood how dysfunctional it was. So he saw it as an opportunity. So there's been, many people don't realize when you even brought up the subject, especially in Bali, tourism sector, no one wanted to hear about garbage because it would, stain the image of Bali. So it was basically everything was swept under the rug, or what you said, swept into the mangrove.
Yeah, so Indonesia actually is starting to realize that tourism is a very viable business model.
Huge.
So, having all the trash end up in the mangroves or on the beaches is going to kill the business model. So for Bali's business model, and we're currently seeing almost no tourists in Bali, which of course is not because of the trash, but because of the pandemic. It's killing the economy. So they're now starting to realize, okay, we need to do something about this trash quickly.
My answer to this so far has been, I worked in waste for the last decade. Mine was to stay out of it. I'm very, very happy to leave the solution for this problem to you guys while I'm running census and other more fun things. It's now for the younger guys to take over and make these problems go away. Do you foresee that things are going to change in Bali and maybe the rest of Indonesia in the coming years?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in fits and starts, but really in the last 4 or 5 years, a lot has changed, or things have been moving in the right direction compared to the previous 10, 15 years. Thierry brought up the issue of tourism. Tourism is going to be one of the key economic drivers for Indonesia, and they recognize that that's a huge asset, and a tourism destination has to be clean. Yeah. Otherwise, you're not creating an asset, you're creating a liability.
Yeah, we got the Boracay thing from the Philippines, right? Which was very ballsy. When you shut down, the president shut down Boracay, one of the biggest tourist destinations in the Philippines. And it really was messy before, but it's still, even Boracay messy, I think it was still cleaner than maybe some parts I've seen other countries of Southeast Asia. But they just went down, they shut the whole thing down and redid the whole island kind of from scratch. Maybe something we need as an infrastructure model ourselves, because we have the wastewater issue as well. Do you have any wastewater treatment facilities on the island?
Yes, there are. There along the bypass, there's a facility where essentially wastewater tanker trucks come and dispose of it. But again, a lot of the households, villas that they use septic systems, they have difficulty to get access to. But they exist. And they have to basically expand them.
Yeah.
The problem now is because of the financial crisis and all that, whether or not they have the funds to build that infrastructure up.
Yeah. Very interesting. So let's talk about your company. I really want to find out. And what's great for me in this program is that all the pitches are a surprise to myself as well. So I can respond to it like I'm hearing it for the first time. I'm actually am hearing it for the first time. So,
Okay.
Olivier, take it from here. Tell us what you do.
Okay, so I am often referred to as the trash man or the bin man of Bali, because for the better part of 25 years, I've been involved in solving the issue of waste. When I initially started, it was with a local NGO, as I mentioned earlier, called the Vishnu Foundation, and we were the first to actually set up formalized waste collection systems. I mean, back then there was nothing. You go down to Nusa, there was no waste collection. We set up the first recycling facilities, composting facilities, and even hazardous waste service. So my experience, I'm really become a domain expert. And as I mentioned, in the past few years, there's been a change in the macro environment of what's going on here. And I've been also involved in setting up, using technology. I set up another company and organization called GRINGGO that was testing out technology. We got money from Google, from USA to test out these ideas. And moving on from that, taking that, this year with some partners that are across Indonesia, we have 19 mid to large scale aggregators that are handling all types of waste. To give you an idea of the volume, they roughly handle, in just PET plastic, something easy people can see, plastic bottles, about 27,000 tons a year. In street value, meaning the lower level, what that's worth about $12 to $15 million. But they're dealing with all types of waste. And what we're doing with them, we're working right now with 3 of them, just testing, designing different technologies that can work with them, mobile apps, using some AI, even IoT. And these guys are, we have a huge advantage because these are the guys that are doing it day to day. Collectively, they have decades and decades of experience. They're dealing with the collection, the processing, the disposal, the recycling of waste. And we're basically bringing them technology to ramp it up. So, I mean, the bottom line is, because we have this experience with them, they're already operating now. It's a huge opportunity for us, and we already have initial funding to get testing on, and we're here to see if there are other people that want to support us, to either fund us, invest in us, and yeah, Trash Tech is our company. I'm Olivier, and I guess it'll be on the screen, my email or WhatsApp or Telegram. You can contact us, and we'll follow up with you.
Very cool. Thierry, your feedback.
Olivier, you started with the intro about the waste issues in Indonesia and in Bali, and so you continued with more background information. So yeah, I tend to like in a pitch, very simple approach is the why. So what's the problem? You spent quite a bit of time explaining that really well, and then the what. So I'm kind of missing the what. So what is the business exactly? What's the service you're offering? What's the technology? Next is the how. So how are you going to get it done? Mm-hmm. And then the who. So who's benefit? I always look at social businesses or impact businesses. So the who is very important to me as a, let's say, impact investor. So, and then the how much. Okay, so the why, the what, the how, the who, and the how much. Very simple structure. I think Guy Kawasaki has a much more elaborate version with, what's the magic, the underlying magic of the company. So, yeah, what I mainly want to know is, what is the service?
Okay, so the reason why I didn't get detailed into that is because that is also somewhat of our secret sauce, so to speak. So knowing this is a 3-minute pitch, my goal was just basically to throw out the line. So yeah. In 3 minutes, keep it short and simple. Yeah. But the main business is essentially, we know how these guys that we're working with operate. Yeah. And what their efficiency and productivity is. And we know if we bring in different types of technology, mm-hmm. and at different companies need different things, we can radically shift increase the productivity. And we've already done that on smaller scale. We were working with collection crews here in Bali where a collection workers increased their productivity like 40%. Their wages went from, so in dollar terms, maybe they were making around, what's it, 2 million, like $120, $150 a month.
Mm-hmm.
After 6 months, they were earning between $350 and $400 a month, which is the equivalent to a bank teller.
But it brings us back to the question. I think we're much aligned because I had no clue what you do before. One big point for everybody out there, this is the first live pitch we have had in quite a long time. And it feels so different to have somebody close to you and I look in your eyes and have a different vibe and be able to chat outside. We talk a lot about the changes and the opportunities of being able to pitch via Zoom. It's really changing everything. You can reach out to investors all over the world, but you're not having this, right? You don't have this personal conversation. You really have to adopt to the way that online presentations are done. This feels a lot more natural, at least to us old guys over here. But to the core question, I haven't fully understand yet what your company does. Are you a service provider? Are you a hardware provider? Are you a broker? Are you a consultant?
So the majority of the technology we involve is essentially mobile technology software. But there is other technology, hardware that's needed as well.
I would literally say that at the very beginning, because for anybody in this field, there are people who are software investors and there are people who are hardware investors. In many cases, that's not the same person.
No.
And it's almost exclusive, right? You know, if I only invest into software, I will never be a hardware investor. And if I'm a hardware investor, I almost never invest into software unless I need it to operate my machinery. So I think that's a very important thing to come at the very beginning, at least from myself, to kind of put it in the category. You know, we don't want to categorize people, but we need to categorize businesses and see if it's even relevant to us. So you are a software company.
Yes, primarily, yes.
Okay, good. Did you get that part?
Now I have.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Julien, for, it's so nice to compartmentalize things. You know, as an outsider, at least you need to know, what is the service you're offering and how is it delivered. So, and the great thing is that even the scavengers, or the pemulung or the catadores in Brazil, have mobile phones these days. So, you've got a great delivery mechanism that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, the thing in a lot of people in the West don't realize is how ubiquitous handphones are in this part of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, landline phones don't exist anymore. Everyone
Indonesia has 130% penetration of mobile phones.
And it's
However,
rapidly
only
increasing.
60% have smartphones.
Yeah.
So you're a software company. I would like to know something about your USP. Like what makes your software special and how can I get involved? How does it solve these problems?
Well, because of our experience and knowledge of really what is going on in the field, what are the problems for this waste collector that's got 100 customers in a city in Jakarta, or an aggregator that has hundreds of tons of material going through. How do you introduce these people to technology? They don't have technology at the moment. I mean, they might have a smartphone, but they don't realize how they can use it to do so many other things to help their business. And so we go in and we identify things that can bring in. Sometimes they're very obvious and sometimes it's more nuanced. So, I mean, the specific example I can give you is with one collector, we tested with having all his customers have QR codes on stickers on the households. So as he went through and collected, he would scan.
Right.
It would create an automatic record of when he picked up, who he picked up. And so, because the number one complaint he had is people were saying he wasn't picking up. All of a sudden he creates a record like that. If someone, he didn't pick up my garbage, come back and get it. No, we were there, here's the proof. We were there an hour ago, you forgot to put your garbage out, whatever. Simple things like that. So that's an example of one. But there are several different
And
things.
where's your cut in this? How are you going to generate revenues from this?
At the moment, we're focused on building up things that can be used. Yeah. So we see the opportunity to grow this up. We don't have to prove necessarily huge revenue streams. We want to have as user acquisition. We want people to feel like they need this because, frankly, charging a scavenger or a waste collector who's only making a few $100s a month seems quite exploitive. So as you mentioned before, the idea of the data that we collect for credits is an opportunity. But also, we provide information for the industry that need. You might have a factory that goes, we have a demand for, 20 tons extra of PET, and they need to get it. And they can contact us, and then we can, put out feelers. Okay, we can estimate what comes in from the.
So there's like a boost button on the app saying we're looking for more of this.
Yeah.
The price has gone up. Go and look for it.
Yeah, I mean that often happens. In our experience, you have companies that have certain agreements where they have to produce certain quantities, and if they don't meet it, there are penalties, and it's worth it for them to pay an extra 5-10%. That doesn't seem like a lot, but it actually is a lot when it gets down to the collector level.
So
okay, and how much money do you need to develop this for the next 12 months?
Because we have received some initial funding and negotiating some things, but we've estimated between $1.5 and $2 million US for the first phase, which is really the first 2.5 years.
And that could get me an equity stake in your company?
I could.
Yeah. Okay.
So I haven't really, I'm really getting old at this point and had a rough week. I haven't really fully understood your business model, or maybe that doesn't need to be a business model, which is perfectly fine as well. So you are building an app that is going to make the waste collection, treatment, and distribution more efficient and easier traceable for commercial customers.
Yes, that's for the commercial customers. That's what they need. The suppliers of plastic to the big FMCGs need to know, they want to be able to say they have recycled plastic. They need to know where that comes from. That's their demand. But lower down, that's not necessarily that requirement. So the app for them will be very different.
Yeah. Okay, but this is the service that you offer, that now suddenly we know all where the waste comes from, and then we have players like you, for example, that then can charge, say, listen, we just got rid of 20 million tons of Coca-Cola plastic bottles in the last year, get Coca-Cola to pay for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, I'm slowly getting it. I have to admit that when you first talked about it, I had no clue.
That was somewhat intentional.
But it really
to give you, a lot of things we're doing now haven't been tried before.
Yeah.
So we don't really want to.
I'm just saying, from an investor perspective, we get, I don't know, about maybe 100 decks per month. We present about 40 companies, and if I don't get it after, I have like attention deficit disorder. You figured that one out.
If you don't get it in a couple
if I don't get it within the first 30 seconds, I might still get curious. If I don't get it after 2 minutes, I get frustrated. And after 3 minutes, I'm like, man, either he can't tell what he's doing or I'm an idiot. And I prefer kind of the first option over that.
Oh, wait, but
and I'm
were
not the only
you
investor.
initially curious?
I'm curious, but I need to understand it. I need to compartmentalize. And we know that a lot of investors, especially these days, they get a lot of pitches.
Yes.
Right? And especially if you're pitching back to 10 companies, they're looking for these opportunities to zoom out. And if they don't get it, they're gone. I mean, that's just my I really try to grab them by the balls. Most of them are male, even if they're not, grab them by the balls, and then just kind of squeeze it until you really have their attention. But for that, they need to know, are you even the investment category, right? As I said, if I'm a software investor, I need to know that. How much you're raising. Are you raising $1 million or are you raising $50 million? Again, targets very, very different people.
Absolutely.
And I think in Bali, we're so relaxed with the way how we communicate our business ideas, because that's how we do it on the islands in general. Once we reach out to people outside of Bali, I think we need to get very precise again and kind of go to that international standard of communication and putting our information in a certain order that's easily understood by a professional. And I know you can do that. You have done this for 25 years.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Okay.
Thierry, what do you think? A little bit your feedback on that.
No, I agree. I mean, everyone has a short attention span, especially most of the viewers here have YouTube on right now. And at the same time, they're getting WhatsApp messages in. So, you got to make sure you get your story out quickly. Yeah. No, exactly.
That's something I find very important. But we're going to put up, if it's possible, we're going to put up your link. Obviously, Oliver's in charge of that. And what kind of investor are you looking for that really would kind of boost your business right now?
I mean, obviously, someone in the sector in clean tech or software, ideally an angel investor group, or basically there's a lot of initial funding and grants to build up the business. We see a lot of opportunity there. So you're talking about funds that have money to spend to develop a market that later they follow up with larger investments. Yeah. So as a way to pilot out the project.
What do you think, Thierry? What would be the best way forward to find an investor for this?
Well, because your pitch is not razor sharp yet, I would go for grants. And I think there are grants available to get your MVP up to a certain standard that you can then get an investor in on the commercial phase of your business. Yeah.
Are the grants available in Indonesia?
Not in Indonesia, but internationally there's quite a lot of grants for things like smart cities, which have a big waste component. There are climate grants. There's also ocean funds out there. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're benefiting from the issue that we're focusing on is quite trendy, quite hot. So there is actually a lot of opportunity out there for us to, instead of selling stake in our company, to jump a little ahead on alternative investments.
Yeah, and you're solving a real problem. I mean, there's something we talk a lot about. It's at least in my opinion, really just worth going through all the hassles if you're really solving a problem. And the problem that you're solving, everybody here at least can resonate with. Everybody knows the problem. It's a hot topic despite COVID. So I mean, there are a lot of people in there putting money where their mouth is to solve it. Mm-hmm. And if there's anything we can do to help, obviously always very welcome.
Well, this is great. Thank you very much for letting me pitch here and talk to you guys, and getting the feedback is always helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Olivier.
Thank you very much. Right. And we're moving on. Who's next? This looks so comfortable.
George Adewell is up next.
I don't know if they're being served a cold beer that's for staff only, or how we do this. Thank you, Olivier. While George is coming on stage here, please just join us right over here. Let me ask you one introductory question.
Maybe we should, because everyone's so used to Zoom these days, we should put a little frame.
I know, it feels so much more comfortable. Because I'm never allowed to move, right? I can just stay on my, in a regular meeting, we move around and everything, but now because everything is done with this automated Zoom cameras, we can't even move around anymore. We can just sit and be incredibly stationary. Things have really changed. But at least we're getting a beer in our little beautiful home here. Welcome, George.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little something about yourself.
So, my background is originally from the UK and British. I've lived in 4 different countries now. Started off in the building game as a carpenter. Learned a lot about trades. Used to work mainly in a lot of historical buildings in London, which was fantastic. Restoring a lot of those churches and old buildings in the UK, which was amazing. And then travelled around the world a bit. Lived in Australia. Lived in Singapore. Went back to London for a while. Went back to Australia, and now back in Asia. So now living in wonderful Bali.
Fantastic. What many of you people out there don't know, George is also a very elegant dancer.
Oh, yes.
I found that out last week. I was like, whoa, where did that come from? Well, this is, how we try to stay busy out here. Maybe just going to start a boy band at some point and try to raise some investment for that. Thierry, you brought George on the program. I know him more socially.
What I really liked about what George told me, and also a couple of people that know George were impressed by, is he actually wants to set up a waste collection system for Bali as it should be. Okay. So, he's buying land. He's going to tell us in his pitch a bit more about it. But he's also looking at things from a slightly wider perspective. So it's not just about collection, processing, storage, and selling, recycling. But it's also about awareness raising, making sure that communities get engaged in the projects. So I shouldn't say any more, but I just like this holistic approach to running a business, and I thought it'd actually be phenomenally challenging. So I wanted to hear his pitch. Yeah.
Cool. I know this was rather last minute, and thank
very
you very
last
much
minute.
for coming on the program. But for me, it's that, I've heard what you're kind of trying to do, just little bits and pieces over the last few months. But give us a rundown. What are you planning on doing?
Yeah, so from a part of a logistics collection process, one of the things for us is actually making sure that the collection is collected in a professional way, especially with waste management. There's a number of forms of waste which is collected here in Bali, but it's all put on one truck. And part of the problem there from a plastic point of view is things are mixed with food waste, and they're mixed with cardboard, and they're mixed with anything actually that ends up in the rubbish. So our whole process is about making sure that we educate in local communities, educate in local schools, and part of that is to make sure that we're collecting the right waste. So we'll have the right bins within the right communities, within the right schools. We'll collect, so they'll be coloured. The trucks that we put on the streets will be coloured, so it makes life simple for people. And then we'll collect the waste and we'll take it to a recycling centre and storage facilities, which will also be managed and colour coded, so that the drivers will learn eventually, once our education program is put in place, that they know that the yellow lane is for the yellow plastics, and that's where they drop off the source of the plastic, and from there it will eventually be recycled and washed and then turned into a product, which is a sellable product, and also can go back into the local communities for micro businesses and helping local communities develop interesting products that can be used from within the building industry right through to the clothing industry, to road waste, etc., etc. So yeah, we have a very clear picture. We're also working with some of the regencies within the different areas of Bali, which really is important. The families, the royal families, have been here for centuries, as we're all very aware. Very cultural, so Bali still keeps that cultureness. So we're working with the regencies to sort of help develop. We've got some great education programs in places. Thierry was saying we have some mutual contacts there, and these are people that have been in Bali a long time and are working with us on some of our educational programs to teach the children from the schools from a low level to from age 4 or 5 right through to the ages of 16 in the schools, and help modelize what the plastic waste and waste management should actually look like to keep the rivers and the oceans much cleaner in Bali, by having effective systems, effective collecting systems, and the logistics is so important. Actually, making sure that you're collecting the right waste. If it's food waste, that's going to go into our compost, and that's going to be then put back into the farming of barley, and also with cardboard and collecting the right cardboard. But that would be an individual collection day and an individual truck. And so it's making sure that it's all color coded. It all works within a system. The education system's taught in the schools, that could then be taught back in the villages, especially when there's festivals, and coming down from the regencies into the villages to help with the banjas and everybody else to actually get some systems and systematic ways of processing how waste should actually be delivered and what the outcome of it is, and the effect on the local environment and the effect on the local people.
Okay, so you're essentially setting up something which should be a normal municipal waste collection service with sorting and processing. And of course, municipal waste processing systems are usually funded through taxes. So
correct.
How are you going to make this work? It's financially, it must be it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, our group that we've set up, called the Habitat Group Indonesia, is a much bigger plan. As you know, we're looking at a much bigger plan outside of logistics, which is all, and it's all focused on community. So it's all focused on education and schooling. From a financial point of view, it's we will set up a full recycle plant. We will set up a full management plant. one of the biggest things that's happened in the past when I think people have tried to set up plastic logistics and product is that they've not actually got the product. So we'll have a model for a financial model, which is an ROI return for investors anyway within the business. And part of that is actually selling recycling and reprocessing plastics back into other products that can be actually sold back into the marketplace, which will include plastic bricks, yarn, road base, as I said, and we're also talking to companies that you've already mentioned about pellets and how that can be put into plastic bottles and returned back into the environment in the right way.
Okay, and doing education, collection, recycling, that's quite a big project. So how are you going to be? Are you going to start? How are you going to phase this?
Yeah, well, we think we're going to do it. We're going to start with each area. So we'll start with a school, and within the school, we'll start within the area of the school. So, if we use Tambanam for an example, we'd start slowly putting an education system in the schools, which is already there under the government process anyway. It's just more about implementation.
But that doesn't sound like a revenue generation activity. So
no, the education piece, I don't think is what we're actually looking at targeting as a revenue piece, because the education actually is something that we believe will actually add pure value to the community itself. Because a lot of the community are not very well versed in what the plastic does. So that's it's just it's a process. So when we start actually collecting the waste itself, and we start collecting the process of the plastics and different types of plastics, different waste, etc., that's where the actual value is in this. It's not in the education.
Right.
Education is for the people, for the communities, to make them fully aware of the problem.
So,
and we'll do that with government.
Usually in a pitch, you also come with your ask. So, how much funding are you looking? And what portion of that is grants, and what portion of that is real investment? So,
for our transportation logistics part, we're looking at raising $5 million. That also involve part of the collection setup and some of the machinery for washing and the plastic and actually cleaning the plastic, and also include for the actual trucks themselves, not the education, because obviously that's going to be done localized, but that's actually for trucking services, the land, and then the holding systems, and then obviously the future will be to do a second phase capital raising for the recycle plant.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my main question in this thing is again kind of breaking it down, like what you're doing. I mean, we obviously have a problem, that needs solving, and we can really, we feel it very strongly. We see the waste issues; it needs to be solved. But if I look now at your business model, right, looking at it from an investor perspective, again, your business model is a little bit shaky at this point. And at least as you communicated, because as I said, in the 12 years I've spent in waste treatment, our economic drivers always been disposal fees or taxes. Like at Heathrow Airport, for example, just said you pay about 1,000 pounds per ton of dry food waste inside the facility. So these are kind of the margins that you work with in waste treatment that usually get paid $200, $300 per ton, even in the US at this point, to get rid of this stuff. Yeah. So if you're saying, and that's going to be the tough part in Indonesia, because I spend, I don't know, $5 a month or something on my waste treatment. Somebody comes by and we slip a little cash, and then he takes the money and dumps the stuff in the mangroves. As I said, that's probably what they're doing with it. So it's a very, very simple business model.
Yeah, thanks for that.
It's really not very sustainable, and there would be an alternative to it. Definitely take it tomorrow. And we're obviously also all willing to pay a little bit more. But running a business model from that perspective on waste disposal fees is going to be very, very difficult. So if you're pitching the business from some kind of economic perspective, at this point you would be like a plastic brick producer or something like that. So that needs to be, at least to my understanding, needs to be the foundation of how you're going to solve the problem, how you're going to pay a return on the invest, because the money needs to come from something. I'm skeptical if you can do this with plastic bricks.
Yeah. Well, there's a
to drive
model.
the business model.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it's not just
If it
plastic
does, I would love to
bricks.
hear about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not just plastic bricks. I think when you look at business models of this magnitude, you've got to look at how we're creating the awareness of the problem as well. So we won't. It's not just about an ROI. This is also about understanding what the problems are and how we can create a return for people like the big.
I think that's absolutely legitimate, and I think there are different funding sources to do that as well.
Yeah, correct.
It is just in that case, I would feel very comfortable to say, listen, this needs to be solved. We should all, chip in a little bit of money, and we should do a crowdfunding campaign, and we should make Bali cleaner. And maybe 20 years down the road, we'll make some money on it. But it's very tough to mix the two. I mean, either it's an ask because it needs to be done.
Yeah,
that is for me. That's for me a foundational work. That's grant work. That's stuff that needs to be done, or it needs to be a financial ask. And for the financial ask, I need to be very clear of what I get back.
Yeah.
For that, I need to have your revenue stream. Otherwise,
correct.
I can't model it.
I think the thing is there's two issues. The first issue is that if it's a social, it's got to be social. Because when you're dealing with communities, it always has to be social. We have to have a focus on local community, local education, because that's going to be a social part. And then the second part is there has to be a revenue stream, because from most investors, there's two models. There's a social part, which they will do from
nice
a philanthropy
bonus,
point,
great to have.
and that's a great to have. And from most of the companies that are out there that are using a lot of the plastic currently in the marketplaces, which we know the brands that are doing that, they're all investing in their own funds anyway to help solve some of these problems. There's a lot of CSR programs out there now where they're looking at doing so much social locally within Bali, and then from a capital return point of view, it's then about saying, you've got to look at this for a decade. It's not going to be an instant return. So you're looking more of an impact investment than a short-term capital gain where you're getting double digits on the return every day, which I know what investors are looking for, but
very, very rare, at least in our industry. I mean, we usually plan in, I would say, 12 to 20 year time frames to begin with. Otherwise, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, as I said, I think investors in the space are used to it. I think also that, and that brings a little bit back to what you're doing, I deeply believe that we should make manufacturers of these products at least partially responsible for the disposal of it. How do you feel about this?
I think that's the only way. There's something called EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, and that is gaining traction in India, in Europe. The manufacturers are selling products to consumers. Some of them are still saying, well, it's the consumer who bought it and they threw it away. So it's
but it's kind of predictable, right? When you buy a bottle of Coke, you're not going to be carrying this with you for the next 50 years.
There are, let's say, a group of more enlightened FMCG or fast-moving consumer goods companies that are realizing they need to actually collect 100% of all the trash or virgin plastic that they're putting out on the streets within the next 10 to 15 years. Otherwise, it's going to be a backlash. So Europe is now, is next year going to introduce a tax on non-recyclable plastic of 800 euros a ton.
Good.
And UK, 200 pounds a ton. So the prices are still, they're far apart, but they're going to move together. So there's no way for these producers to hide from the pollution that's being created. They are now taking responsibility. So here in Indonesia, Danone is already collecting a large portion of what they're producing. They're nowhere near getting to 100% yet, but they're hoping to do that by 2035. And it's costing them a lot of money to do that right now. So what we're trying to do with the Circular Action Hub and the fund is to create this currency so that they don't have to set up the whole sourcing of plastics themselves, but can actually outsource it to a lot of processors that are out there, like your business once it gets going. And there's a green currency through which they can pay called the circular credit.
I really, really love the system. So as George is moving forward, and of course we wish you all the luck in the world to make this happen. It really needs to be solved. Somebody needs to do it, and it's not going to be me. I'm just saying that quite clearly.
No. So just one final thing:
who
who is the type of financier
exactly
that would want to finance a 20-year project, which has a massive social component? So it's seems halfway philanthropy, halfway investment.
I think there's probably a number of family offices out there that would be interested in this sort of model because there's a philanthropy piece, the impact investment side. I think obviously going back to the companies that you already mentioned earlier about the funds that they're already setting up to actually replenish some of the plastic that's already in the marketplaces and some of the issues of reduction and waste. So there's that whole recycle plants going on now. Amatal, I know, are building big plants to do pellet plants to actually recycle some of their plastic bottles, and also so that they're not putting more waste in the market. So I think some family offices out there, maybe some very interesting green funds that are looking at long-term strategies as well, because of it's not all about capital return. It's obviously about actually doing good in the community, and that's also going to be part of the education, because the more people are educated on this sort of thing, the more the awareness is, and I believe off the back end of that, once you've got a focal point that people are educated on it and the awareness is there, then you won't have so much in the oceans. You won't have so much in the rivers.
Yeah, I'm a little bit skeptical about this education thing. I think the next speaker is someone who tackled it from a very different approach,
right? Which
was to go on a kayak in the most polluted river in Indonesia, which caused a bit of a shake-up.
Yeah.
And that was very educational. So maybe that would be an interesting
Oliver
approach.
Keeps pushing us in the back, but I want your take on this, Thierry. Make it very quick. What do you think might be a good funding route to get this done?
Okay, one thing Indonesia has been really good at is creating green bonds. It's an Islamic type of bond. It's called a green sukuk. They raised $2.5 billion each time. They've done this 3 times now. It's been oversubscribed. Now, these are massive funding rounds. So officially, what you are trying to do is create something which the municipal waste system should be doing. Correct. So in my opinion, you would maybe better be quicker getting the largest cities of Indonesia to buy into a bond which gets issued, which is backed by the Indonesian government, with a proper waste collection system at the municipal level. I think because it's government funded, it's where it should be, and you're really trying to demonstrate to the local city how it should be done.
Correct.
But is that really your job?
Well, no, but someone's got to do it.
Yeah,
because it's getting worse.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
Yeah.
And we're going to leave it at that.
I think something, not a corporate or a sovereign bond, but let's say municipal bonds, which are backed by the Indonesian government. Get that done.
Exactly. We give you a week. Thanks. Thank you so much, George.
Thank you very much for your time
and for your great work on this. And we're going to be moving on, right? We have one more guest on our program. I do think so.
That's right.
And
Gary.
We can hand this to me. Thank you very much,
Thank
George.
you very much. Thank you.
And Thierry, thank you so much for bringing all of our guests on the show tonight. That's really, really awesome.
You're
and I'm
welcome.
meeting like some new people
Some
here.
of them had a long time to prepare as well.
Exactly. Hi.
Hi. Great to meet you. Gary.
Hi, Gary. We have
Hey,
some
Gary.
new faces on the island. Like we thought, like after 9 months being
Gary
locked down.
is not new.
Yeah, I've been
He's
new
been
face
here
to
a
me.
lot longer than
16
you have.
years.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm almost born and bred.
Okay. Keep your microphone closed, but there's a new face to me, and that's ultimately also not that easy. That means you probably don't go out party too much in Canggu. Because I don't go to too many important events. I just go to the fun ones.
No, Gary, I don't think is the type of person that you would see in your restaurant out partying.
I've been lately in the midst of COVID, I guess, more on rivers,
Yes.
The rainy season has just started.
Okay.
So that means full-time river time.
Okay. And quick introduction. What are you doing on those rivers?
Cool. Yeah. So grew up on the island of Bali. 3 years ago, with my younger brother, we decided that we wanted to go down the most polluted river in the world, which happened to be on the island next to Bali in Java, the Chiturum River, where 27 million people live on this river. And so we had the craziest idea of going down the river with 2 plastic bottle kayaks to represent, the visual of how much plastics comes out from our rivers. Where 90% of plastics are coming from rivers and streams, which nobody really realizes when they see the plastic pollution pandemic. And after a 2-week kayaking trip, that truly changed our life. We became fully rivermen after that. But what we experienced on the river was so shocking. We would see these mountains of trash dumped on both sides of the river, trash burning, and that's what really inspired me to pilot in Bali these simple trash barriers to stop plastics before it goes out into the ocean. So for the last year, in the midst of the pandemic, we've really been growing the river movement here in Bali. We've been so lucky to have such a tight community where we get 100, 150 people a week coming out to rivers with us, but setting up 25 barriers this year, and these barriers are very local, scalable barriers, from anything from a PVC pipe with some galvanized wire mesh to more robust standing up barriers where we can stand on top of them. And so we pull material from the rivers, plastic trash, the worst of the worst, the wet waste that doesn't have any value, the 40% that are not being recycled in Indonesia, and turning that into gold. So we have a research station that we just opened in North Canggu, where we sort the plastics, try to accumulate as much data as possible. One of the biggest inspirations behind this project was really to foster the data. Who are the biggest polluters out there? How can you work with the big companies to in turn fund the removal of plastics in rivers? But mostly, how can we create a big economy around it? Work with village, with farmers. So we just signed our first government contract last week. So now we're working with 260 people to clean 10 rivers in Badung. So from the airport to Tanah Lot, before Bali reopens. So it's a 40-day mission. We're 5 days in. It's every day wake up at 5 a.m. and just got a text, I think maybe 5 hours ago, from Thierry to jump on this. So thank you for having me, guys.
Wonderful. So if you're using the research station to figure out how you can turn this into gold, or to make it clear what types of waste are coming through the rivers and from who?
And please define the gold.
Yeah. So it's mainly the recyclable stuff that's the gold. At the moment, 60% of what we collect on the rivers are organic fabrics, diapers, waste that is too deteriorated or damaged that you can't recycle. So we're really trying to pinpoint all the way by brands, by color of trash, by type of plastics, to see what can actually be recycled. So at the moment, it's mainly been a research station. We just released our first monthly river plastic report last month, where we really take a comparison between what's actually are the biggest polluting brands of branded plastics to all the different types of recyclable waste. And then so from there, it goes to partners. We're really in early stage right now piloting these solutions, but we're already working with a lot of partners that we've fostered all throughout the years. So turning sandals back into sandals, turning hard plastics into hats. So one of the business models that funds this removal of cleanups is cool products that we make with some of these partners to try to monetize plastic waste.
Cool. So you're, let's say, on the business side, you're upcycling the trash that is coming through, and you're selling it through your own outlets or
through aggregators. So here on the island, we have like Eco Bali, for example, Waste Management. They've been a very close partner. In Java, working with Waste for Change as another one. But they're the aggregators. They give us a price, and then also really starting to speak to some of the bigger guys. I met Thierry at the president director of Danone house. So really speaking to Danone about how they could potentially put a subsidy on the plastics that we in turn take to give it more value down in the supply chain of recyclables.
Okay, so do you see a future where what you're doing is a business, or are you going to be a not-for-profit for the foreseeable future and it may spin off into a business?
Yeah.
And number two, how do you fund it?
So we're a full business. I think one of the ways that we monetize is through the funding of barriers or funding of entire villages. So we just kicked off yesterday an entire village, with the sponsorship of WWF. So it's like you could be individuals that are super passionate about giving back to Bali or giving back to Indonesia. So funding one barrier or funding a village, and then down when we collect the material, it's how can we actually monetize it. So products is one. We're looking at various other forms, so subscription-based models, and various forms of monetization after trash has been collected. Another one, for example, is plastic credit, where we actually set a price on the plastics per kg. So working with various brands to set a price on the kilo of plastics. So working with swimsuit brands on the island, for every swimsuit, like X amount of kgs are being collected. So trying to monetize the plastics that we collect.
How much does one of these river barriers cost, roughly?
So it starts from 2,500 and can go up to
euros or
dollars,
okay,
all the way to like $12,000. So we want to keep costs as low as possible. There's various other players in the industry that are charging like $500,000. We want to be fully scalable. Our goal earlier this year, we launched at Davos at the World Economic Forum to have 100 trash barriers by the end of 2021, and 10,000 in 2 years. So it's a huge.
How many rivers does Bali have?
Bali has around 300 rivers.
Okay, so you'll do a third.
Yeah, and then I think from there, it's how can we scale, like fully multiply, massively, and really work into scaling in Java. Java, back to where we started our conversation off with the most polluted river. That's where so much of the work needs to be done. Bali is really a pilot testing mode. One of these rivers catches anywhere between 3.5 tons of plastic to like 20 tons.
Yeah, and I spend a lot of time in India as well, and you see this, just the waste flowing out the river. If it's too complicated to get somebody to pick up the trash at every individual home, this might be the second best way you can do, but it's probably a lot more effective. So just my feeling is just my feeling, I don't know how it is to raise money for something like this, but is that it's so good, it's so obvious, so cheap, it makes such a big impact for so little financial investment. I feel there should be 10,000 people in the world that want to invest into one of those nets, and not really invest it, but just help you put it up there.
No, completely. And so
it sounds more like a good social media campaign than that's needed than talking to investors that probably might have the issue, and you can waste
for this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And asking to investors, and that's also for our audience out there, it's always underestimate talking to investors and putting forward a business model with little chance of success, because obviously this is, again, very much in the philanthropy kind of world. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, a lot of rejection, and you can probably put it somewhere else where that time is much more valuable, because you're talking to the right people that want to support you in doing this. And if you can stop a river from polluting for $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, I think it's a lot of impact for very little money.
Okay, but you asked the question about what is the barrage or the barrier cost. I think most of the costs are going to be in actually emptying it out in the rain season, it's going to be maybe on a daily basis.
Completely.
So how do you arrange that? And shouldn't that be the job of the Banjar, of the local village?
So we just signed our first governmental contract last week, working with 260 people to clean 10 rivers in Badung. But so really getting local villagers to get down and dirty and clean the rivers. In Java, we have 7,000 military troops to clean up the Citarum River. So this is definitely something that can scale. Armies are getting behind it. One of the head generals of Indonesia was telling me, that if Indonesia can no longer go to war until its waterways have been fully cleaned up. So we're seeing Indonesia, 270 million people. We have manpower. People need jobs, especially in the midst of COVID. And so if we can give them an mission to do good, you're adding education as a part of the job, and you're getting that sense of eagerness from Banjars, from desas, from villages. And so it's been really interesting. This is 5 days in, but to do like a little bit of a competition between villages to see which village cleans the river the quickest. For us, we have a full-on SOP of how we go about cleaning rivers to make sure that sponsors are happy and seeing data. Yeah. We want to be fully transparent where every single dollar is spent and where every single piece of plastic is taken out of, because we want to be, set a standard as to what river cleanup actually means. So we have a full crew that goes out every day, takes a before-after photo, weighs the bags, and then we document the process in our research station to really show what actually ends up in the rivers, and then in turn. So I think the way that we can really scale is to working with some of the big corporates, really trying to get them in the conversation of, so our first river plastic report, Danone came on top, Unilever came second, Wings Food came third. So how can we work with some of the bigger names to actually fund the removal of plastics? And now more and more some of these big
what does came on top mean?
The biggest polluters have branded plastics.
So they're the trash brands.
In a way, for Bali.
Right.
So how can you work with CSR budgets, but HR budgets, maybe set up barriers where the factories are, engage their workers, and really work towards, every one of these big corporates have big goals to become plastic neutral. I mean, you work in the field, so how can we tap in some of those budgets to then in turn work directly? So, but for now, I think it's that scalability. For me, every rainfall in the middle of the evening, I get a nightmare, of this plastic river that I experienced on the most polluted river in the world. And for me, it's that urgency of going as fast as possible to ensure that we have as many barriers as possible ASAP.
So, all the trash comes through the rivers, is collected by your barriers, but I know one of the rivers not far from my house called Nyanyi. There's a sort of temporary waste site right next to the river. And I can imagine, if I look at the edge, that a lot of it is just slipping into the river. So how do you stop the trash actually getting into the rivers on this large scale? I mean, this is a point source location. It's a waste site. And is there a way, I mean, you can't cover all the costs, like our previous speaker, George, is, setting up a whole full-blown waste system. Are you going to be dealing with that side of things as well, or is it just after the fact?
So being so community-driven, we actually just launched our Sungai Hotline, which is a 24/7 hotline on WhatsApp, where you can send trash hotspots and report them directly on our WhatsApp number, where we'll literally tag those villages. We're working very closely with each one of those villages. The Nyanyi River, we're actually setting that trash barrier up in January, and it's going to be our biggest barrier yet. But that landfill that you're speaking about is Chamagi, working very closely with the DESA to seeing how we can actually minimize those dump sites. So from community involvement to the partnerships that we're building with the government to really fostering long-term relationships. And that is not going to be Sungai Watch, but that can be our broader partners that are directly involved in the waste management sector.
Okay, so from a business perspective, in 2 years' time, what is your company going to look like on the P&L? So on the revenue side, and who are going to be your shareholders, or is it going to be a lot of grants that come in?
So at the moment, it's a lot of grants, individual sponsors, but we're really trying to scale this up massively, trying to monetize river plastics. I think in 2 years, we really want to be the biggest river network at least in Indonesia, really focusing on scalability. Sungai Watch is a project of our mother company, Make a Change, which is an environmental organization to bring plastic pollution to front page news using media as a weapon to do so. So I really think that, it could be anywhere from family office putting money to angel investors that really truly believe in making impact. Our business models tell us that within a year we're already profitable. We're just 6 months in the midst of COVID, fighting back and already seeing great impact.
Okay, and just one other thing in terms of, let's say, are there competitors in your field? Because I've seen something called the Interceptor, the ocean cleanup program. I believe the ship cost 700,000 euros to basically suck up waste from one river. Your proposition seems a lot cheaper, except you haven't fully automated, so you still require a lot of manpower to clean everything up. Are there any other sort of competing initiatives because you can't deal with the world. You can hopefully scale to Java, maybe some other islands. So we need more of what you're doing.
So we're going fully open source, meaning that really building that community element, building that brand image globally. Anybody can really build a trash barrier. They're so simple to build. It's just a design mechanism. But when you speak about the interceptor, with one interceptor, we can set up 100 rivers with a full mechanism operational behind it. So meaning pickup trucks, full crews, and a research station in the back of them. So I think that the interceptor is just the interceptor within itself. We still do not know where their trash is necessarily going. So that's another conversation to be had. But other technologies are obviously existent. On Bali, we're partnering with the Great Bubble Barrier project, which is a barrier from the Netherlands that shoots up these bubbles and directs the trash to a certain part of the river where it goes into a trap. So we're really seeing Sungai Watch as that monitoring, that bigger platform umbrella that can bring in technologies together, scaling massively and really open to collaboration with. So if there's less plastics in the ocean, that's ultimately the dream. So I wouldn't necessarily name other people in the space as competitors.
Right. And in terms of your tactics, so I would say your kayak expedition in the Cirebon River was fantastic. It went viral. You got Jokowi to come. The army got involved. Within 2 years, it already had a massive impact on the amount of trash. So let's say that was almost like a shaming campaign. Because you put so much attention to this one river, which is like the most polluted river in the world. Now you're tackling it from a more business-like perspective. So if your goal is to clean up the oceans, what works better?
Well, definitely rivers. 90% of plastics come from rivers. I think that. So you're speaking about tackling the ocean.
Tactic. So your initial tactic was, okay, let's get this going viral,
right,
and just going, embarrassing actually people along the river or the government was very effective. And now you're using barriers and a more business-like perspective. The question is, do you need to use both tactics to achieve your goals, or would it be better to use the shaming approach?
I think it's definitely both approaches hand in hand. We're setting our first couple barriers on the Cirebon in February, so really moving to Java quite quickly. Last month, we launched Indonesia's second big cleanup campaign on the Ciliwung, which is the river that flows right through Jakarta. So that again, seeing the power that it has to, I think it's mass collaborations. I think it's media. So not necessarily the shaming, because what we were doing on the Cirebon was not pointing fingers, but it was more, this is a plastic bottle kayak.
No fingers, but lots of spotlights.
Yes, but so I think it's media, but right now more than ever, it's solutions. It's how can we scale up these simple solutions that don't need much thinking, and how can we scale them up massively? And I think that's what we need more than anything. A simple, like the kayak that we took down the Cirebon that went viral, and so many groups all throughout Indonesia were super amazed and interested about how could we actually build plastic bottle kayaks. Now that we're putting these barriers out, people are like, could you give us an IKEA blueprint of how to build our own trash barriers? So that's what we want to get to. That's how we want to scale. But I think, we just need a little push to get us there, using Bali as our main vehicle, and trying to massively scale throughout Indonesia, the second biggest polluter of plastic pollution. And from there, Southeast Asia is surrounding us, so why not?
Yeah, but I would really, and I think Thierry's going the same direction. You're a very charismatic leader. You're a good speaker, right? We believe you. Very authentic in what you do. You're solving a problem with very low-tech technology that you don't have to invest hundreds of millions upfront on day number one. Obviously, we still need to figure out what to do with the waste afterwards. But my feeling is literally just quadruple down on the marketing effect of things. Like, you have everything there to tell a great story, make a maximum impact. I think it's going to be a tough story for a while for investors to see, like, until you get the sponsorship in. So there's obviously revenue models you can put in place, like long-term sponsorship, like a 5-year deal with Danone or Coca-Cola, this kind of companies that's going to drive your revenue up, obviously. But I don't think it should be the focus. My feeling for the foreseeable future. You got a great story. Just go out there, hammer the mixture between putting awareness, raising awareness. I don't think we call that shaming these days anymore. We call that raising awareness to a good cause.
Thank you for educating me.
It really works. And obviously, every negative story like this has a bigger impact than saying something nice in general. That's just how social media works. Is there anything that, like, maybe somebody in our network can do to support you in your work? Because I think it's incredibly grassroots. It works incredibly well. So how can people get involved?
I think right now more than ever, we really have to prove this idea that we need individual sponsors per barrier, or if you're a bigger corporate and you just want to do good, you can fund an entire village. Help us scale right now. Really.
Do you have like a campaign that's like sponsor a barrier?
Yeah.
For Christmas? Yeah. Like if I want, instead of like buying some kind of stupid gift, I want to buy a barrier for Indonesia instead. We have a Christmas gift donation program.
Thanksgiving is coming even sooner.
Exactly,
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Fund a barrier.
I think it's a great story. People should fund more barriers for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and Bali has so many hotels. Why don't you get one hotel per barrier, and also get their staff to clean it up?
Some of our partners have been the hotel industry pre-COVID, and we've seen the impacts afterwards. But as soon as things open up, I think that we really have to tackle into the tourism industry on the island. But yeah, we're completely all for these marketing campaigns that we can really drive funds there. Yeah. My brother ran across the country from New York to LA, running a marathon every single day to spread awareness about our cause. And we've been getting so much amazing momentum there that just shows the perseverance that we have. But I think that this is a marathon, and so hopefully.
Are you set up as a foundation or something, or how can people send money to you?
We're setting up as a foundation in the U.S.
Okay.
But yeah, at the moment in Indonesia, as a for-profit, and really trying to see how we can fully scale.
And you combine the two things. I mean, there's no, it's not one or the other. They work actually very, very nicely hand in hand.
You've created a movement, so you're the perfect type of organization for a crowdfunding approach, plus a subscription and a sponsorship approach. Yeah. So I wouldn't try and push the business side of things too quickly. First, get everything worked out, and then in a year or two, start really. Once your research center has really zoomed in on where the profits are going to come from, then you can really scale up your business side. At least that's how it seems to me. Yeah. And no, I'm very impressed by the movement you've created.
Yeah,
well done.
Yes. Thank you for
impressive.
Giving me the stage, and hope to see both on the river maybe soon.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. Great idea. I love the outdoors.
Rather than a party in Canggu.
No, not really.
We have free beers.
Somebody has to do it. Really, really great information. We're going to put all this up online, obviously. And again, it shows one of the great examples we try to make on this program. there's so many different kinds of businesses, right? We've just seen 3 very different approaches just within one program, how to tackle, very vital problems in waste treatment. Sometimes sponsorship being there's nothing wrong with it. There are so many corporations out there, so many rich people that want to give back to society for, whatever they've done in their past. We should encourage them to do this. And if you got such a simple solution out there, use the tools of marketing to reach these people, maybe not waste the time and put in all the efforts to make it too commercial too early.
Yep.
Because I don't know how you feel. I can be one or the other. It's tough for me to really combine profitability with impact. I love impact, right? But I love to, somebody else can say, listen, let's forget about making money right now. That makes it as cheap and impactful as possible and get people to believe in us. I have no problem with that.
And I think that's the point of this evening, that in every single business that has been presented, all of them require to get up to this MVP stage, minimum viable product stage, which will require grants and sponsorship of some sort. And of course, the waste sector is a phenomenally difficult sector to crack, as you know, since you've been in Nigeria and God knows how many other countries.
I have broken one of the biggest. I don't know if you told this. One of the first funders was the Waste Management Inc., and we literally single-handedly broke their venture fund. They gave up. They found it so difficult. It's the largest waste treatment company in the United States. They gave us like 17 million. Never got anything back for that, poor guys. But
well, that's a grant, isn't it?
No, that was ultimately was a grant. But they've literally given up because it's so hard in the waste industry really to bring change. It's such an archaic industry, so many obstacles along the way. And so if somebody comes wholeheartedly and say, listen, let's just solve the problem without having to focus on making money. We just need to pay our staff, need to pay ourselves, need to pay the equipment, but we can drive massive impact. I think it's an amazing story.
Yeah.
I love to hear it. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thierry, stay with me for a few minutes. I got some general questions about you and your work here. So Bali startup scene is something we talk a lot mainly on our Wednesday program. How do you see it, kind of growing or shrinking, or what do you see the future in the Bali startup scene?
Before the pandemic, there were a lot of tourists coming here, and there were expats, and there are a couple of phenomenal entrepreneurs here. In the past, many of them were focused on the hotels, the restaurants, and everything. But there are a lot of enlightened people here who've even set up schools where my children go to, like the Green School. However, since the pandemic came, the tourists have left. A lot of the expats have left Bali. And you are starting to see people who want to work from home. They realize they're going to work from home anyway, and they would love to do that with a better quality of life. Yeah. So there's many people coming from Hong Kong, from Singapore, those places with a lot of apartment buildings, and they realize there's a big digital nomad scene here. There's the facilities here. So that whole scene, startup scene for Bali is growing, and it's growing quite fast. So even this next week, there'll be the launch of something called the Bali Investment Club, which is the first sort of formal investment club that I've seen up here. I myself have set up angel network events here. But it's like a one-off, or it's more of a hobby. But now it's starting to formalize, and I think they'll be successful at doing this. So I think you can probably expect a lot more candidates for your show in the coming months.
We'd love to. The one question that I always have when it comes to Bali startups, the one thing is also my point, why the hell would you still live in Silicon Valley right now? Especially if you're starting your own business. Everybody else is working from home, and you're the only sucker that still pays the San Francisco rent, for example. That's just stupid. You just get a lot more here for your money. So I do think that we're going to have a lot more founders, entrepreneurs come to Bali. In the past, at least what I've seen, people come here, they finish their app, they finish their project, but it's temporary, right? If you're an entrepreneur and you do come to Bali, is there any infrastructure that you can recommend that you see fostering that startup economy, or is that still in its infancy?
The place to be for the infrastructure to set up companies and the funding, the VC market is Jakarta. However, also they are realizing, okay, we're in a sort of semi-lockdown situation in Jakarta. Many of them are actually coming here as well. So yes, there are many agencies here that will help you set up your business. They will claim to do the legal, the visa, your home. They will even deliver food if you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, however, most of them are a scam, but the serious ones are now starting to appear here. So, what I really like about the last 3 years in Bali is that the co-working scene has, co-working spaces have really developed, and that has become a natural hive for all these busy bees setting up their businesses. So what we are missing is, let's say, the funding side. So the structuring of the funding side. So the Bali Investment Club could be a first embryonic attempt at a fund for Bali. There are several investors here, but you got to get to know them. Yeah. But no, by and large, the investors are either that will invest here are from Singapore or Jakarta.
Yeah. So, something personal about you. What is next for you? You talked about the waste credits, the circular credits that you're doing. That's out in the open now. Can I sign up with my own projects? Where does the project start?
Yeah. So the first platform in the world for circular businesses and projects where they can actually get funding is the circularactionhub.org. Once you register on that platform, you'll be asked to fill in estimations of how much waste you will be processing for the foreseeable future. So the first ask is for the next 12 months. You will also be asked how much funding you need to be able to scale up your project. So if you divide the two, you get a rough price for how much money is needed to be able to process more waste. So these projects will get funding from the Circular Action Fund, which is currently fundraising. But we are at the same time looking at large corporations like Coca-Cola, Unilever, Danone's been mentioned a couple of times, to see whether they will actually sign offtake agreements with us, whereby they are not committed to pay until the delivery has happened. So yeah, if you register on Circular Action Hub, your project will at least get exposure to start with. Number two, we will be, with our fund, we'll fund the most feasible projects. Also the ones that don't ask for outrageous amounts of funding for a very small volume of waste that's processed. Okay, otherwise, you know, you're going to be charging maybe $10,000 per ton of plastic. Whereas
great business model, yes.
Yeah, that's right. But I feel more the going rate should be in the hundreds, not in the thousands of dollars. So that's a message to you. Registering on the platform, don't go crazy on your funding. Do
people do that? Do people sign up and say, listen, pay me 10,000, you know?
Well, you know, Silicon Valley, I think, is where all this kind of thinking came from.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
You have no
that'd be a
company,
total game changer.
You have no revenue, and you're going to ask for $50 million. Yeah. So
you say like there's something wrong with that.
Well, it's maybe something wrong with the investors that are investing in it.
It was a different time. It was a different time. I was young. I needed the money. You know,
$70 million. Okay,
we did 57 in the first round on
57 with no
million.
Revenues.
No, not even. Took us another. We're still not making revenue on that. No, to another decade after that. No, it was like a technical drawing out of university on a napkin.
And this is the shirt that you bought from it?
That's it. 2006 last shirt that I bought. Funding went down after that. No, but it's a different business model in general. But Thierry, thank you so much for taking the time to come on our program. And we love to do things in Bali, right? If there are other Bali investors, Bali Investor Club you mentioned, Will, I think, is going to be with us very soon with his team to talk about it once everything is set up. Definitely a lot of exciting things happening. I would personally love to see the waste problem be tackled in first Bali, then Indonesia, then all of Southeast Asia, then we can tackle India and everything else. There are a lot of great initiatives out there, but there's still massive challenges and that need to be resolved.
I feel the whole circular credit mechanism, which is a global
it's a game changer.
Will be a game changer, and it'll make possible for people to pay in Europe for something that's happening here. So,
investors into that, what are you looking for? Like big corporates,
our
right?
fund is 30 million, and we're looking for 5 million anchor funding, because the 5 million anchor funding will allow us to finance our first 10 projects.
Yeah. And again, a very asset light, right? You're not investing into the asset. You're just paying the person to do the credit and then reselling the credit to a corporate.
Yeah,
that's
the point is,
right?
we will not finance your existing volume of waste being processed, because that's your baseline.
Yeah.
We are looking for additionality, which means that funding is needed to grow your processing capacity. And so
how are you planning on tracking that? I mean, not that anybody would ever do anything illegal in the waste industry, but in case there's the one black sheep.
The founder of BV Rio and Circular Action Hub, Pedro Maracosta, he started in 1991 with the whole carbon markets before anyone else was thinking about this. So validation, verification, certification in that market is also very difficult. It's all about forests, also landfills, wind, solar, and then there's clouds flying by. So how do you measure, the percentage of clouds over your solar panels? So in the waste, we have that tackled, and what's really great is 2 weeks ago we signed an agreement with SGS, which is probably the largest certification, or one of the largest certification companies in the world. They worked with us at Eco-Securities back in the 1990s, 2000s. So we have the best players in the world to do this.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, in 30 million, I mean, it's really in the waste industry, not that
peanuts.
much money. It's absolute peanuts. We can spend that in a quarter easily.
And the other point is these credits are being bought at $90, being sold at $150. So there is a big margin there for which we need to pay, our costs, SGS's costs. So it means we can probably pay investors 20% on
that
their investment.
should be an absolute no-brainer. Again, it's Shell. I think just no Shell next week, huh? Gert de Waal is pushing back past Christmas. That's sad to hear. This is exactly, I think, that Gert. Have you met with him, Gert from Shell Ventures? I've looked at a lot of Dutch people recently on the program here. But these are kind of like the companies that we're looking for, right? Automotive would be interesting.
It's
produce
so
a lot of
kind
ways.
of you as a German to invite so many Dutch people to your program.
They're actually really, it's a very small, cute little country, but highly innovative.
One of your provinces, huh?
No, my last name is Van Buren, actually. I mean, it's pretty Dutch right there. No, but I have to say, really a lot of cool companies coming out of the Netherlands.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
We work quite a lot with the university in Delft, for example, on deep tech stuff. Some of the best innovation. We had a company recently on that were doing like subatomic surface layerings, like just like atoms you can spread on surfaces, but it's like beyond nano, was like micro nano.
Amazing.
Super cool stuff coming out
So
of
I can
Delft.
put new spread on my bread in the morning.
Without noticing it. Yeah.
Right.
Great for fake. Excellent,
Okay.
Thierry. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks to our technical team in the back, Oliver and Felix, and a few things we have coming up this week. We're still doing the 25th, right? I'm just guessing this. It's going to be Best of Israel, working with Terra Ventures. Harold Wiener and his team to promote 5 of the best tech companies coming out of Israel. It's going to be super awesome. A lot of robotics, a lot of AA stuff. Then we have on December 3rd, the big exventure night from the US, between 12 and 15 companies from the US that will be pitching. And we're going to be back on Tuesday with another pitch mastermind. And then tomorrow, I think we're still doing our late night program. So we're going to have about 3-4 companies on tomorrow night, and it's always an exciting program. Thank you all so much for your attention to this. Thank you, Thierry. Thank you to all of our guests who are still here. And from us here in beautiful Canggu, Bali, have a good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.